All right, guys, so this is a really interesting story, and I don't see it getting a lot of play, but we're going to talk about it here. There's a bombshell CNN report that links J.D. Vance to nightmare work conditions. They say Senator J.D. Vance-backed company exposed workers to nightmare conditions that saw ambulances rushing them to the hospital with heat stroke symptoms frequently. A bombshell CNN report stated Tuesday, as a venture capitalist, which he is, Mr. Fake Populist, he came out the other day and said, I want to raise the child tax credit. Really? Well, they just had a vote on extending the child tax credit, and 44 Republicans voted against it, and you dodged the vote entirely. You have a weird way of showing you support the child tax credit by not even being there to vote in favor of the child tax credit. You absolute fraud. Mr., hillbilly elegy. Me, I'm just a working guy, man. I'm just a normal guy, man. Look at my background, man. Didn't you go to Yale? And aren't you a fucking venture capitalist? Shut the fuck up, pudgy doughboy with eyeliner. As a venture capitalist, Vance sunk $150,000 into the startup App Harvest in eastern Kentucky in 2017 and took a seat on the board of directors. But conditions at the indoor agriculture company deteriorated soon after its opening. Former workers described to the network, last year, 3 years after it went public, App Harvest declared bankruptcy with hundreds of millions of dollars of debt. Quote, the rise and fall of the company and Vance's role in it cuts against his image as a champion for the working class, an image that helped catapult him to the top of the Republican ticket, as Donald Trump's running mate CNN reported. The network found that the company, quote, not only failed as a business after pursuing rapid growth, but also provided a grim job experience for many of the working class Kentuckians Vance has vowed to help. The company, made up of massive greenhouses in which crops were grown, exposed workers to temperatures up to 128 degrees, former workers told CNN. 128 degrees. Complaints filed with the U.S. Department of Labor and a Kentucky regulator between 2020 and 2023 show that workers alleged they were given insufficient water breaks and weren't provided adequate safety gear. Some workers said they suffered heat exhaustion or injuries, though state inspectors did not find violations. Workers told how tempting health care and work conditions that brought them to the company quickly deteriorated as management upped production and costs. Quote, I think about the hottest that I experienced was about 128 degrees, worker Anthony Morgan said. A couple days a week, you'd have an ambulance show up and you see people leaving on gurneys to go to the hospital. I had to bring in my own N95 masks because I was getting sick from the amount of mold and just nasty stuff that was in there, worker Shelby Hester told CNN. She said workers were routinely taken out of the greenhouse by medical personnel because they were suffering from heat stroke symptoms. Those who went to the doctor, she said, were told by managers that a doctor's note was not a sufficient reason to miss a shift. Multiple former workers reported that, despite promising local jobs, the bulk of the staff was made up of contracted migrant workers. Vance stepped down from the company in 2021, but remained an investor, CNN reported. Last year, as he became a senator, it was mired in lawsuits filed by shareholders angry over its plummeting stock price and allegations of fraud. Luke Schroeder, a Vance spokesman, told CNN the senator, quote, was not aware of the operational decisions regarding hiring, employee benefits, or other workplace policies which were made after he departed App Harvest board. Like all early supporters, J.D. Vance believed in App Harvest's mission and wishes the company would have succeeded. It was a nightmare, quote, it was a nightmare that should have never happened, Morgan said of his experience overall. Making the decision to go work at App Harvest, like many of us made, the livelihood just went right down the drain. I blame all of the original investors. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of the story about how Mitt Romney worked for Bain Capital, the venture capitalists, right? And how many companies they absolutely destroyed, how many working people's lives they destroyed. It also reminds me of that company that Mitt Romney worked for, where they were outsourcing the jobs. This was like while he was running for president. They were in the midst of outsourcing the jobs. And that company told the workers, the U.S. workers of that company, we need you guys to build a stage for us right here, right? They built the stage, and that stage was then used for management to come in and tell all these workers, you're all being fired and we're outsourcing the jobs. One of those guys spoke to the media and said, we felt like we were building our own coffin when we were building that stage. We all lost our livelihood. That was a huge story about Mitt Romney. And by the way, Obama released a brutal ad over that, just clonking Romney over the head for basically being an elitist prick, an elitist, vulture, capitalist son of a bitch. That worked. That worked. And as we all know, Romney lost. Mr. Thurston Howell III, right? This reminds me of that story. This sounds like it was top 5% horrible working conditions for the employees. And he was on the board, and then he was still an investor after the fact, and there were all sorts of disgusting violations. Here's your working class hero. Here's your working class hero with eyeliner. Here he is. This is the sort of stuff that he was involved in. You know, regular working guy stuff. Being an investor in a massively exploitative company that's absolutely horrible to their workers and requires multiple ambulance trips per week. This is who JD Vance is, man. Never, ever forget it. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.